Last week we took a look at the Canon 60D. We asked ourselves, is this a good camera to learn photography on? Is it a good camera for a beginner? And is it still relevant in 2022? Well, this week we're taking a look at the Panasonic G80. We're asking ourselves the same questions, and right up front, you can probably see this is a small camera, this is lightweight. The lens we've got paired with it, 14 to 45mm, look at the size of that. This is a really, really small setup. And that's kind of one of the advantages of a micro four thirds camera like this. Now, micro four thirds, if you're not familiar, basically means it's a smaller sensor. You've got full frame, you've got APS-C, which is a crop sensor, and you've got micro four thirds, which is smaller again. And it means that the cameras and the lenses can be really quite small and lightweight. Now, that's an immediate advantage of a setup like this. If you're a student, if you're someone learning, and you want to be taking the camera out as much as possible, this is easily going to slip into pretty much any bag you have. You don't need a dedicated bag for it. It'll probably even slip into a pocket if you have a big enough, like a coat pocket or something like that. You could absolutely do that. So for students, for someone who just wants this on them as much as possible, that is a massive plus. Now, this is absolutely more of a hybrid system that's probably geared more towards someone who wants to learn photography and videography rather than specifically photography. And that's because at its heart, it is designed to be good at shooting video as well as photography, including actually on the design of the camera. You've got the dedicated record button here, things that might seem obvious now, but when this came out 5 or 6 years ago, this absolutely felt very video focused as well as that photography. Now, spec-wise, you've got things like 16 megapixel sensor, so not the biggest resolution, but it's absolutely fine, right? That's still gonna give you some nice images. You can have a nice bit of detail in there. Sure, you don't have as much room to crop, but it's still gonna give you some really nice photos. It can shoot quite fast as well, 9 frames a second in continuous shooting mode. And then you got the video. Now, this is capable of doing 4K video, which I think if you're talking about a video system in 2022, I think at this point, it probably does need to shoot 4K. And the reason for that, even though most people watch videos back in full HD, most people will watch on their phone or even if it is on their computer, they'll watch in full HD, not 4K. But I think it's important to be able to shoot video at 4K now. Most phones will shoot 4K video. You know, most cameras that come out now will shoot 4K video. And I think if you're talking about learning video in 2022, I think that's probably quite important. So it's good that that has it in here. It can shoot 4K up to 30 frames a second, full HD up to 60 frames a second, which means you can get some slow motion in there. That's gonna be great for people learning. Obviously, some of the features, in fact, pretty much all of the features are not gonna stand up to a modern camera that comes out now. But I mean, it would be absolutely crazy if it did. But the advantage of a camera like this, I mean, this, for example, in our used department, we've got a few of them, is gonna set you back somewhere between about 300 to 339 pounds at the moment, depending on the kind of condition that you want to go for. It's pretty reasonable for the kind of camera that you're going to be getting. And then, of course, like I say, we've got the 14 to 45mm here because that's just a very good all-rounder setup. But if you wanted to go for a prime lens, that would also be useful. Otherwise, a nice zoom like this, great all-rounder. So it's not going to set you back a crazy amount, but you are going to be able to shoot 4K video. You're going to be able to shoot some nice photos in RAW as well, so you can get used to editing and all that kind of stuff. And the actual build of the camera is quite comfortable. You've got a nice comfortable grip. Like I said before, it's very small and light, but otherwise you've got some nice kind of ergonomic placement of buttons on here. You don't have a joystick, which is always a shame, I think. But again, this is a camera you're learning on, so you can always upgrade to something later on when you decide what kind of pathway you want to go down. You've got the flip out screen, which I think is fantastic. And in an age of YouTube and content creation and all that kind of stuff, the fact that this screen flips out and flips all the way around so you can film yourself very easily is fantastic. You've also got things in here like in-body image stabilization. So you've got the 5-axis IS, which is really useful again for kind of handheld video shooting. It's good for photos as well, for using a slower shutter speed. But certainly if we focus on that kind of video side of things, that's gonna be really useful. I shoot an awful lot of video handheld, and I rely on the in-body image stabilization of my camera a lot of the time to do that. So having it in this camera does keep it kind of relevant in 2022. I think for the kind of price point that you'd be paying for something like this and the 14 to 45, this is gonna be a great system which is gonna take you quite a long way. You know, you've got 4K video in there, you've got the in-body image stabilization, you've got the flip out screen. This is gonna be able to take you really quite far actually on your learning journey for videography and for photography as well. I focused mostly on videography in this video, and that's because a lot of the stuff we talked about last week applies here. So things like higher ISO values, you know, are not going to be as good as in modern cameras. So that's kind of low light shooting. You know, now you can shoot at ridiculous ISO values and not have to worry about loads of noise, whereas in older cameras, that's not necessarily the case, but that's kind of a good thing if you're learning because it forces you to think about light. So all those kinds of things we talked about last week definitely apply here, but you've got all that added stuff about video that we've been talking about with this camera. Now, it does have some decent connections as well. So you've got things like a microphone input, which is great for, you know, whether you are doing talking head segments or interviews or whatever it might be, and a mini HDMI input as well, which is always useful for a video camera if you want to have an external monitor or something like that. All in all, a great system if you want to be learning hybrid shooting, if you want to be learning video. This isn't going to break the bank, and it's going to allow you to have a lot of those tools that you're going to need to shoot good video and to get good results. And you know, this is going to take you quite far before you feel the need to upgrade. Now, of course, you can check out this camera. You can check out the full used department by following the links down in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because there's new content all the time. I will see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.